Hello, hello, hello. We will start in 2, 3 minutes. We need to get everybody a place here and then we start with today's meetup. Hopefully the sounds worked. Hello, hello, hello. Here in the Tech Talk office and also hi on stream. Welcome to a special meetup today. It's the February.net meetup, but also the February. How do you count your meetups in the software architect meetups?
So today we are Software Architecture Vienna, but we're also doing domain-driven design Vienna and microservices, distributed system, and reactive. So it's MRDS. So it's only one, but with a lot of words. So it depends on how many topics you want to count. But yeah, a lot of interesting software architecture topics, what we are doing.
So three meetup groups at least. So yeah, combined meetup here, with the .NET meetup and the Software Architecture Vienna meetup. Here, hi on stream. Different retro than usual intro. Quickly to get to the talk. Thanks to our sponsors. First, Tech Talk for the location, drinks and snacks and food afterwards. Thanks to Rubicon for sponsoring the .NET meetup financially, and also thanks to JetBrains for again supporting us with 12 months product licenses to raffle. If you want to take part in the raffle, as usual, please go in the chat of the streams on Twitch or YouTube and enter hashtag JetBrains in the chat. And at the end of after the talk, we make a quick raffle. Also for the people here in the on location in the room, please do it. Also, it's simply quicker and easier for us. Good. Our upcoming events mixed from our two meetups. So the next .NET meetup is on the 24th of March. Pattern-based C#, if it quacks like a duck, with Eva Ditzelmüller and Stefan Pölz. No? No, that's the one in Vienna. Not in Linz. Yes, there's also one in Linz, but that's the one in Vienna. It's Square. So we have a first meetup organizer in the room.
Yeah, that's great. So it's not only Vienna, but it's Austria here. Yes. So on the 25th of March, we have Annegret Juncker from Munich here. She will talk about how we can combine domain-driven design with API design, how to do this together with AI. We may see a little bit of event storming and these kind of things also. So it's here also in the office at Tech Talk. So I think this will be really cool. Then on the 15th of April, we haven't decided the topic yet. Henning will be here again. He's from Hamburg, from WPS. Because we are here as ComoCamp organizers, and we have also and then the next one I think is .NET meetup again.
Yeah, somewhere in April. We don't have yet a final date. We have it was first planned for March. Now it's in April. Kafka through the lens of .NET from Shahab Ganji. This is at Square. The other one in April is at Sentry. And
in May, we have the ComoCamp again in Vienna. So if you haven't heard about ComoCamp, just have a look. ComoCamp is organized by Collaborate Vienna. So it's this small icon. It's the nonprofit organization which is doing all the other free meetups I was mentioned. So there's a team of, I think also Fabian is here from our meetup group. So hi, Fabian. So that's about ComoCamp. Then, yeah, maybe something, yeah. You may have heard 25 years of Agile Manifesto. So it's already 25 years ago it was written. Some special thing. Do you know Alistair Cockburn? Who knows in the room Alistair Cockburn? Yeah. One of the authors of Agile Manifesto. Yeah, he will be also here in Vienna. So Alistair Cockburn is coming to Vienna. He will be here also in May, 21st of May, also for a meetup. So if you want to meet Alistair Cockburn, one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto, live here in Vienna, you can join. The meetup is already online. So, and we are doing it together this time also with the Vienna Agile community. So another meetup group. But yeah, I think that's it for the next dates.
Yeah, a lot of in the calendar. And with that, we finally go from the stage and let the really important people talk today, Tim and Patrick. Do you get enough signal?
Hello,
Check the mic.
Test.
You should hear
Test,
us
test.
over the speakers more.
Test.
More. Okay.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's
enough.
try with this.
Okay. Cool.
Gut. Dann
Ja.
präsentieren.
You hear me breathing? That is too much. Okay. Cool. Thank you all for coming to our talk. We are going to talk about. Kann man den ein bisschen rüberschieben? Dann sieht die Slides leichter. Yeah. Today we are talking about evolving modular monoliths with architectural fitness functions. That's quite a loaded term that we have here, but we will go through all the details and guide you through the solution that we have. And before we start, I want to give special thanks to Anna and Milena for TechTalk for hosting the meetup and doing a lot of organizations. We are responsible that we have pizza here, so we are very happy. Thank you. And especially thanks also to Andy and Daniel for hosting the meetup and doing a lot of the organizational stuff in the background, marketing and so on. And I'm really happy that we have two communities here sharing one topic. That's always really nice to see collaboration between roles. So just to give you an overview of where we are going and what's the solution that we have currently in place. This is important so you can follow the whole journey, how we arrived there and everything that we made happen in the last years. So currently in my team, we are developing a code base towards a modular monolith. That means we had no green field, we had some brown field, and we are refactoring it towards this target that we have. What is a modular monolith? The simplest explanation, it is one deployable unit consisting of multiple modules, and each module is covering one business aspect. We are performing those refactorings towards the modular monolith over time with a target vision, and we are supported here by tests. So this is where the concept of evolutionary architecture comes in. It helps us that we move incrementally towards the target that we want to have, guided by a fitness function. The fitness function gives us a good measure on where are we compared to the target where we want to get to. It's not like a test that is red, green, and then you're gone. It's more like a measure of how close you are to where you want to get. And the fitness function that we have is implemented as an architecture test, and we're using approval testing for this. Architecture tests are basically unit tests that check if the rules that you have for your architecture, for your building blocks are adhered to. And the last technique that we use is approval testing. Simplest explanation is instead of writing an assert for a test, you dump something to a file and then you say, okay, yeah, this is correct. This represents what we want to have. It's a different assertion technique that helps us for the solution that we have. So, and to introduce ourselves, the talk is brought to you by me, Patrick Säuerl. I'm software architect from TechTalk and have 4 days a week I have the role of a tech lead at for Säuerl Wien. Okay, good, thanks. And currently I'm spending 6 years on the same solution, which is quite a long time, and you see a lot of evolvement over there. And where you will find me this year, usually at the Como Camp Vienna, which I can recommend highly.
the HL2 and the trainings with Alistair, Daniel teased. And also I'll be holding some trainings for software architecture foundation level in February, April, and October. We will be hybrid, so we have on-site and online together. And
yeah, it's also brought by me. I'm Tim. I was in the same team as Patrick for 2 years as a developer. There we worked for 2 years on the same solution. And now I switched teams and now I'm a tech lead at for Soziales Wien. And I'm also at some events, at some meetups, and also I'm a lot outdoors.
Go. How will we spend the next hour together? We will give you an overview of the journey that the code base undertook in the last years. We will give you the target vision that we have developed and the problem statement that we have on how we got there. Then we will see how we developed architectural fitness functions to guide us towards this target vision. Then we have a demo and evaluation of our approach. And one note, we will fly over many topics and we will combine them to generate something that helps us. So don't expect deep dives in every topic that we have. So the journey, 2020, how did the software solution look like when I joined the team? It was basically a simple master data administration software consisting roughly about 20 entities, mainly CRUD, some Windows service that syncs to old legacy system. It had some ideas of the CQRS, Common Query Responsibility Separation. Layering was kind of there, not good, not bad, but some ideas there. We had a lot of tight coupling because generics, abstract template methods, and so on got all mixed together. And the pattern usage, depending on where you looked into the solution, was quite different everywhere. So the same things did not get solved in the same way. And I remember the product owner asking me when I joined the team, hey, some developers recommend like we should rewrite this from scratch, dump everything. How do you see this? And we have some new requirements coming up. So what do we do with that? It's basically, I got handed some nice small ball of mud. Where are we now in 2026? We have a modular monolith. We have a clear technical layering. We have a clear business layering with the different modules that we have. We even managed at a peak that 3 teams were concurrently contributing to this solution without major disturbances or major drawbacks, major architectural, I do it that way, you do it that way, and so on. So it was really consistent development. We still have some legacy. The refactoring is not finished, but we know where it is, and it is managed. Great success. How does this more look like in concrete terms? We started out in 2020 with a software that consisted of 3 main parts, namely Angular UI, Angular JS UI, and the Angular that we use now, mixed with some Razor UIs, so kind of funky hybrid. A web server in .NET for 8 and an application server also in .NET for 8 that was managing the master data. What happened in the next 2 years? We had the requirement that we have to do a lot of new entities, mainly called the contacts. What do we understand with contacts? Like if you are a person, you in our context, you might have someone who is a legal guardian for you, and we have to administrate that, or you have to administrate that some person is trustworthy. We can call that person, or that someone is should be getting the mail. So that's kind of the administration area that we're in. And we knew, okay, AngularJS, nope, that technology. We are not developing in this technology. We knew that we should use a new application server written in .NET 6. So we have a way to move forward, and it should be implemented in Angular UI. This was all for us the requirements to adhere to for the reference architecture and for maintainability that we had. So we decided, okay, cool. We do not want to replicate the patterns in the master data, but we have to go a separate way, but not develop a whole new microservice or module for this. So we decided that we have on the one side the master data and add a new module, the context, where we are free from the technical debt, but still can move, and do not introduce new completely decoupled deployable units and have a lot of communication over the wire between the two sets. Next thing is we were able to do some Angular UI migrations. So more of the master data moved into the Angular UI, and still the old stuff kept on. And then we had a lot of new requirements, like we need to have an identification, like if you go to Finance Online or something else, you have to identify yourself. And we had to build in identification for master data for our customers so that other parts of the software can use this functionality from the online sign-in provided by the Austrian government. We had to take a new interface for care allowance. In Germany, this is the Pflegegeld. And we had to develop those two parts. This is where we were at that time with 2 to 3 teams developing each on different modules and working on it. And you also see a new thing like the core slice. This is not a business-oriented slice, but a basic technical module that covers things like domain-driven design basic classes, one implementation of an outbox so that all the other modules do not have to implement this, basics for transaction handling. So this is more or less the platform module for the whole modular monolith. So we arrived with our team at the target design, which is a modular monolith, and we had to make this more explicit in the team because the basic concept was in my head and in some senior developers' head, but if you onboard new teams, if you get new junior developers, it's always hard to make that concepts clear for them. So what is basically a modular monolith? A modular monolith consists of different modules. Depending on where you're coming from and which terminology you use, you will also hear the term slices or verticals. And each one of those represents some kind of encapsulated business domain. Usually, a good addition is one shared technical core, and everything is deployed together. How should this business modules depend on each other? Usually, to manage the complexity, you should have the target of that we have no cycles and we should form a hierarchy. If you achieve this, usually complexity goes down. If you have like everyone knows everyone, then changeability usually drops a lot. And it indicates that from a business point, you do not have the correct slicing for the domain. How is one module inside structured? One module for us contains the host layer, which is basically the REST interfaces, the message bus interfaces, and so on. It's a thin layer that's just handling I/O. Application layer handling use cases, request handler. That's the main part of it. Domain layer for the modules, and also contracts that give us an interface for external services or for our persistence for our database. You also see here that the application layer is jumping to the contracts layer. This is for the query side. This is usually a technique that you use for when you're using command query responsibility segregation, that on the query side you can jump this layer. We also see here what we also call those layers in the host layers. Usually we come from hexagonal architecture. That's also called ports and adapters architecture. The host layer usually are the ports that you open to the other systems to join. And the contracts and the implementation to the external systems is usually called adapters. It's just a small, tiny sneak peek. If you want to have a deep dive, come to that training. I'll be also there because I think it's really cool setup, and talking to the person that developed this concept might be really interesting. So the problem that we have is we have this legacy or this system that has been developed over a lot of years. And we want to get it into this unified structure. We know where we want to go, but how do we come there without months of refactoring and just going like, okay, we will stop development features for the next months and just refactor it so that it's much more beautiful now. That's hardly a thing a business sponsor would say, yeah, cool, do it. The problem that we had here is one of the modules that we identified, we were all having different setups. Like some were having multiple projects because we said like, okay, this one endpoint should be a project, that endpoint for that customer should be a project, that endpoint for that customer should be a project. And we ended up with, I don't know, 90, 100 projects. And at some point Visual Studio was like, not so good. The same with the domain structures. Some were one project, some were like one project for services, one for contracts, one for DTOs, one for validation, one for yada, 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 yada. Yeah. So we have widely different styles in the modules, and we wanted to make visible how far away from our target that we have is each one of those modules. So how, in our term, how can we make visible the technical depth in that sense for each module? And how do we ensure if we have multiple teams committing to our solution that we adhere to the rules that we have without us actually monitoring every pull request and having a lot of discussions with them all the time.
Mm-hmm. So the way we went about this was we wanted to try out architecture tests. And I wanted to do a quick question in the room. Who already has some experience with architecture tests? Okay, perfect. Someone who used architecture tests to test dependencies with modular monoliths? Okay, one, perfect. And did someone combine the architecture tests with approval tests? All right, perfect. Quick intro on what architecture tests are. So architecture tests are essentially unit tests which test your software architecture. You can test that your architectural constraints are followed. So it's simple unit tests. And we use the library ArchUnit.net for that. And you can test multiple things about your architecture. You can test about your dependency rules, where you can check if certain types are dependent of other types, and if that's allowed. So you can say that types of this namespace are not allowed to depend on types of that other namespace. And what you can do with that is you can also test your layering with that. So you can, for example, test that your types in your API layer, in the host layer, they don't depend on the types of the infrastructure layer directly. You can also test more simpler things, in my opinion, like naming conventions. You can say that, for example, all your mediator request handlers need to have the name end in request handler. You can also test with the dependency rules that you are free of cycles in your types. And you can also test, like, for example, attribute rules that your controller methods need to have certain attributes. Otherwise, the test is red and you need to fix it. In this talk, we will concentrate on the dependency rules and layering, because that's the challenge we had and we wanted to solve. Quick example, this is a unit test from what we tried out in our solution. A simple test of, like, is a module allowed to depend on another module? In this case, no. And as you can see, ArchUnit.net has a simple Fluent API for that. You just say, you create this rule for types that are Pflegegeld module, the care allowance module, should not depend on the master's module, because they should be decoupled. And what you do then is you check the rule against the architecture. And in the architecture, we declared for ArchUnit.net which assemblies are in our solution. Now, for example, if I would be a developer who creates a new feature, I will create a new mediator handler or any other class inside of the Pflegegeld module of this module. And then by accident, I use a query from the standard module, which is not allowed. So I use this and I develop, and then when I run all my unit tests, then the tests will be red. The demo command handler does depend on this type from this other module, and this is not allowed. So the test fails. And now what we found out for us is that the timing of introducing these tests is pretty crucial, because of course, at the start of the project where you have no violations, it is very inexpensive to introduce these tests, because you don't have any violations. So the test is green and you can continue on. But what we found out was we had a pretty big solution which had some history and where we had a lot of violations. And this is where we found out it's pretty expensive, if not impossible, to retrofit these tests on this solution. Because what happened to us is we just had this wall of violations in the exceptions. And even sometimes we had some problems where ArchUnit.net just gave us an exception and we didn't even know what was wrong. So it was even just pretty difficult to analyze our violations. And yeah, we couldn't even do some exceptions for certain types, because we didn't know which types were wrong. So that's what, like, then we checked that this doesn't work for us, and that we needed more flexibility. When we have violations and the tests are getting red, we need a solution, because we can't just skip these tests. For now, we wanted to get on with our solution. And also we wanted better error messages, and we also wanted to verify that we have set up ArchUnit.net correctly, because we had some difficulties with all our assemblies and we weren't even sure if we loaded all the assemblies correctly and that ArchUnit.net really understood our solution.
So yeah, we had some knowledge about fitness functions, and we knew about the idea, and we thought about, okay, cool, could we not get something like a fitness function from evolutionary architecture going instead of a test that is red or green, and just tells you, okay, cool, it's wrong, have fun. And we also had some knowledge about approval testing. I will now introduce you to the idea of fitness functions. Fitness functions have the responsibility that you continuously evaluate quality requirements. Usually the requirements and the business context is something that we test with unit tests, with functional testing, with integration testing. That's something we're usually good at, but there are other quality criteria of your software architecture and your solution that you can also continuously monitor, where you just have a different characteristic instead of red, green, but it could be like in reliability, how good do you handle outages? Netflix did a lot of this with the Chaos Monkeys, where you're really good in evaluating a service on that spectrum. Usability with accessibility scores, you can also do this over time. Another good example is performance. where how fit is your service doing under load and on production, and where do you get green or red signals from there. So for us, it was like maintainability. Fitness function we want to have is how correct is the layering and the dependencies inside this module. And this is what we wanted to create.
Yeah, and to continue our solution, we like thought about how could we take the architecture tests and like create some kind of fitness function for that. And then we found out, yeah, we already use something in our solution which could help us, which was approval testing. So approval testing is sometimes also known as snapshot testing. It's an assertion technique where you, instead of writing out your asserts manually, you take the content of, you take an object and you put the content of that object into a text file. And we used verify for that, the library. So essentially the object is dumped into a text file, and then if you as a developer think that's all correct, you check that into source control, and then that's your gold standard. And if you then run the test again and you change the production code and the output is something different, then the test will be read, and then you will need to compare the files. You will need to compare the gold standard, and you will compare the current data output. And if you think that's correct, then you can check that in again. Then you have the new gold standard, or you need to fix your code and check that your production code is correct. Quick example, like instead of writing all the fields of one object out and what you expect it to have, you and then assert on that, you just take the object from the production code and then you put it into verify, and verify will then do all the logic for you to create this kind of difference matching. So that was our idea. We wanted to take the architecture tests and approval testing, and our idea was to just extract all the namespaces we have in our solution and all the dependencies, and we dump them into verify. And of course, there's a little more structure to it than that, but that was essentially the idea. And the criteria we have set for us was we wanted the dependencies to be easily identifiable, and we wanted to make existing violations more explicit. We wanted to prevent new violations, and we also wanted to it to be readable and maintainable, instead of what we found out previously with our first tryouts with architecture tests. And that's what we did. And what you can see here is a unit test. I will do a quick demo after the slide, but just a quick introduction. Essentially, what we are doing is we do a fitness function unit test per module and per layer. So here we have the layer care allowance, and we'll test the application layer of this module. And what we do is we say which layer we want to test, and then we define which other layers from this module and other modules are allowed for this layer. So we say that the domain layer of the same module is of course allowed for the application layer. We also say that it can access directly the infrastructure layers, and also the layers of the core module. The core module is our special module where we have the core functionalities. So every module is allowed to depend on the core module too. And then what we also have on the bottom is we have two whitelists. If you use types which are not defined here in these allowed depending layers, you will need to decide if this is allowed and permanently allowed, or you need to decide that this is actually not allowed. This is a violation that needs refactoring later on, but you can document it. You can put it into this field, and then the test will go green again, and you can go on with your use case, and then later on you can discuss with your team if how we want to fix this violation. But that's the key for us. We can overrule the Arch unit result, the red test. We can say, thank you, but we will fix it later. And now I want to show you quickly how this works for developers. And I will also show quickly how it's implemented as well. So what we have here is the demo command handler, as I have shown before, where I'm in the nurse allowance module, and I'm using a query which I should not be using as a developer. So what I can do now, I will develop, and at some point I will run my unit tests, and there are also the Arch unit tests are there. By the way, this is a real solution we use in production. So thank you to my boss at Fonds Soziales Wien, which allowed us to actually show a real solution and not just a sample project. So that's why it's also building a little bit slowly, because it's pretty big. It should be done pretty soon. So right now the architecture is being loaded from ArchUnitNet, and then our test will go right, because verify sees that the namespaces it extracted, or that were extracted, are now different than the gold standard, which is currently checked in. So the first one is always slower because it needs to build too. Should be quicker later on. So what will happen now? The diff window is open, and now what we can see is, oh, I have the violation already on. Okay, I will quickly do an accept all. I accept all the file changes, and hopefully there it should be okay. Yeah, exactly. What happens then if you use a type which is not defined in our allowed depending layers? It will go into unaccounted for namespaces. So you could just check this in, you can stage this, and you can commit it. But the thing is, with our test, we did it the way that if there's something in the unaccounted for namespaces, the test will stay red, even if it should be the new gold standard. Because we think that the developer should actively decide if this is a permanent solution for us, or if it's violating, or he or she should fix it. So the test would still stay red in this case. What I can do now, and this needs some kind of onboarding for newer developers, but this you need to know, and then you can continue. So I have a Pflegegeld module here. So this is the care allowance module in English. And here we have the definitions of our allowed namespaces, where I can now put in, or I decide if this is a violation or if it's a permanently allowed solution. But in this case, I talk with my team, and this is a violation. And now I can put it here into this property. And by this way, I can overrule the tests, and I can document as well that this is a violation. Now we just pretend that we don't have any concepts in our architecture where I could fix this problem in actuality. We just say this, we need to get on with our use case, with our user story. We need to document it and move on. So if I run this test now again, what will happen is verify will write this now into the violations that need refactoring property, and then I can check this file in, and I can I'm done with this. What we said for our team is we don't just want to document it here in code. We also want to create work items. And we use Azure DevOps or Jira or anything. We just say that we want to track it in the backlog too, so that we can plan our fix as well, or we can discuss it in refinements or whatever. Yeah, so the tests should now go red again because the gold standard changed, but then I can accept it, I can check it in, and then the test would stay green. So I think this view is pretty bad, so I will switch to Git again. To Git extensions, I mean. And here you can see, now I've put it into the violation namespaces that need refactoring, and our test is set up in a way that it will stay green in this case. And that's pretty much done. I can check it in. And now I am done as a developer. What I want to show a little bit more of is how this is actually implemented as well. So the foundation of every architecture test from ArchUnit.net is that you need to define a architecture from the architecture type. And it's pretty simple. You just give it all the assemblies in your solution, at least these that you want to test. And then you just say arch loader, load all the assemblies and the dependencies of them into the architecture. And this architecture we use to then actually do a little bit of code. What we do is we take we extract all the namespaces of this architecture, and we do some set intersections as well. We also extract the dependent namespaces of this layer, and then we take it, we do set intersections, and then we put it into verify. It looks a little bit more than it really is. It's pretty simple. Just extract all the namespaces, set intersections, and then dump them here into the properties. And
there's one step between, because the architecture is just the amount of assemblies that you have in all the projects, but you also have to find like, okay, this layer consists out of these projects.
Yeah, that's true.
That's maybe a missing link here.
Missing link, yeah. So do you mean in the base module, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So here I have the definitions of which, like from the host layer, for example, in which namespaces all the types of the host layer lie in. So here we have just the host layer namespace. It's defined at the top. We would just say, in this namespace, all the types from the host are defined, and then ArchUnit.net knows about it and can do more with it. Yeah, that's what you meant, right?
Yeah. For example, you see here the domain layer are types that reside in the main domain assembly and all the others, because in the new modules that we develop, we said domain is one project. In the old ones, we had multiple projects, so we had to do some leniency for having the legacy onboarded into this meta model for our architecture.
Yeah, like a few days ago, I implemented these architecture tests for a new solution, and it was way simpler because it's a new solution. But we still decided to also use these kind of architecture tests. But it was pretty simple to set up. Yeah. The last thing maybe I can show is, again, I can show a real output of a real module. That's what's missing until now. The first thing is we dump all the namespaces inside this layer, for example, of the application layer. The reason we did this was because we weren't even sure if we loaded the architecture correctly, and this way we could check that it is actually the case. We catch all the dependencies we have. What we also have is the namespaces of all the depending layers, which is allowed per default by the rules we set on. As you can see here, we depend on core domain, for example, which is obviously allowed. The application layer of this module can also depend on the domain types, and that's fine for us. Just kind of documentation on what this layer or depends on, actually. Then we have the permanent whitelist, and you can see we are pretty verbose because we also catch the system namespaces. Here you could even argue that it's a little bit too much and that we always allow these namespaces. But here in these kind of whitelists, we have mainly like just package dependencies, which we of course allow in the application layer. We allow mediator, but it's not part of any module of us. So that's why we need to define it here. And then here, the violating namespace that I just introduced, here documented as well. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. The only thing you need to do if you introduce a new module is you need to depend on the base module. You need to implement the base module do a concrete class of that. Maybe I'm just jumping too much around right now. I will open the Pflegegeld module again. And the only thing here is just some properties with the whitelists and maybe the assemblies if you are not using the default assemblies we expect of you. And then you put it into the module tests as well, just theory data. Here we have all the modules, and that's it. Yeah, I think
cool.
That was the demo. Oops. Okay, it's loading.
Loading screen.
Evaluation.
Okay, cool. Let's come to the evaluation. We realized a lot of benefits from the test. So the test that we set up is actually really a fitness function for our module because we see how much violations do we have here, and we can really tell in this module we will have a lot more work. In this module we are very close to where we want to be. And it also helps us to assess the severity of the violations, because if you just have namespaces that you do not want to have because you have a lot of projects and old namespace naming with different setups, it's not so that severe. But if you have really hard violations like accessing from the domain module directly to some external service dependencies, that's a no-go. So we can also track this and evaluate where investments are worthwhile.
Yep, just from a developer's perspective, I found out it's for one great that we can avoid new errors in the architecture. It just gives a little bit more confidence. For example, when I prepared for this for these slides, I looked at the module, the Pflegegeld module, and I knew it with more violations. Now I checked it out and I saw there are no more violations, which was really cool for me to just have confidence just at a glance by just looking at one or two verify files. And also what I found out, it was really cool with big PRs, with many changes, that I could very quickly check what really changed on the dependencies. And I saw which types were created, and that gave me a kind of overview of all the changes. And the architecture changes could be really reviewed really fast. And what I also liked about it, I mean, I'm very biased. It's just really good, great integrated into the development flow, because we use tools we already used before, approval testing and architecture tests for different things. And it's just developer tooling as we already used. And it also gives immediate feedback. So you don't need to wait for any pipeline run where any other kind of SonarQube or something tells you something. So it's like you have the immediate feedback. That's I thought was pretty good.
I also had some other benefits of this test. Seeing our team, we really help to facilitate the learning and the growth of the other developers inside the team, because this approach forced them to make a decision. And if the way we implement it is really good, is not good, does it adhere to the rules, does it not adhere to the rules that we have? And this led to a lot of valuable discussions, because if you just go to developers and teach these concepts, it's really hard to also apply the concepts when you're doing a user story. You have to do, maybe there's a deadline on the user story, maybe you have to do some legacy code and so on. Then at some point, your mental space for all these architectural rules just goes away. And this helps that you will have these discussions. And it really led to a much better understanding from the team for the technical vision where we are heading towards. And one of the great benefits for me is I have explicit technical debt management. I know what are the errors in the layering in my solution day by day. I can, and I do not have to run around with diagrams, update them all the time, and just go, okay, this line is not okay, this line is not okay. I just have it there up to date every day. This makes the technical debt in that areas explicit and visible for everyone. And improvements are really nice, plannable, and able to prioritize. Because we just have, okay, a user story is this violation should be not here anymore, and we can discuss what we need to do for this violation to be removed. But it's just, it gives you a clear target when this refactoring is done. And the developers in the team can just say, cool, that's great. I know when I'm finished with this. This is especially helpful because around Christmas or so on, you quite have some time where just one developer too is on the team. We have some more lenience with what we do, and they can just do one thing with confidence. And that's really great. For this kind of tests, there might be some alternatives with Sonograph, independent team scale, lattice structure 101. We have not evaluated them because our spike that we did was more than good enough. Maybe if someone has experiences with those tools and knows how to set this kind of test or guidance up with them, I'm looking forward to the discussion with you later. Yeah, the drawbacks and the future. One of the drawbacks is, okay, obviously you need onboarding and it feels kind of weird because if you get a new team, like, okay, this verify, this approval test thing is popping up. What do you actually want from me? What do I need to do to make my user story go green and so on? This is some investment that you have to do, which I personally think is worthwhile because either you have the talks and the pull request reviews and the teaching, or you have the onboarding. And I'm happy with the onboarding, but it's not like something like, here it is, just run and go with it. All the slices are quite difficult to onboard because we have to adapt our building blocks and layering meta model for them to accommodate. And the technical core slice is a special dependency that needs to have some different rules than the other slices, but this is a more deep dive thing that we can talk later. And the future for us with this kind of test is, cool, we want to fix the technical debt that we have made transparent. And this tooling setup is, we are very happy with it. We are, for our setup, feature complete. We do not have any use cases that we want to add on, so it's working and integrated. We are really happy with it. The learnings. In the beginning, I was really skeptical adding architecture tests for the older layers and how we can do this, but it turned out the investment into this setup and combining the approval testing with the architecture tests was much more valuable than expected because it really raised the level of the developers in my team, the developers in other teams, and team is now taking the same setup to the next team. So it really helps raising the whole bar. And my opinion about a few things has also changed because of this approach. Usually, if you go to reference projects in the .NET environment, which it did a lot, you see that layering is usually implemented using different projects and the project dependencies between them. I realized, okay, namespaces are enough for layerings and for dependency management. And I would use now projects really if it's an executable that is running somewhere, if it's a test project or a NuGet package, but not for any other architectural decisions. So the trend that you have just one project and namespaces or folders inside of it, I'm now really confident for this approach. But yeah, feel free to challenge me later. And I also had a really nice idea and never was able to try out, because we had this big old software and we did not know the target that we want to have and how to move there and how to measure the difference. What I would love to try with a team at some point is what I call the namespace game. Like, just go around, print all the namespaces that you have, and see on a whiteboard or somewhere else that you move them to the target architecture where you want to have them. So this is maybe a nice little game that you can do in a few hours to see where you want to head with a technical vision. And you can then see the delta with your current structure and where you want to be. So this is maybe a lightweight approach if you need to have a technical vision or refactoring of layerings inside your software. If you want to get started with this, there's also a talk from Andreas Hölzelwimmer, a developer on my team. He did a talk about architectural snapshot testing for the Stammtisch Linz meetup, where he goes much more into detail in all the things we left out in our demo, like how to use verify.net, how to use architecture.net, what are the building blocks. There's a sample solution. So if you want to get started with the ideas with here, and if you want to check out a sample project where you can really play around with this, that's the way to go. Thank you for your attentions. What are your questions?
In the verified file for that one slice that you showed, I think you also showed the list of dependencies that are allowed to access the slice, right? So the incoming dependencies. Is that right? Did I get this right?
Can we go to the slides?
Yeah, to the slides, yeah.
No, actually, it was in this verified file. But
So usually we verify what are we dependent on.
so the outgoing dependencies.
The outgoing dependencies, yeah.
Okay, then I
Not the incoming.
Okay, then I probably misunderstood this.
So these are in our building blocks, like it is defined, we from the application layer are allowed to access the domain layer. So we have here the allowed namespaces of depending layers of layers that we are allowed to depend on.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Thank you.
One question from the online chat. Does Arch Unit also work with minimal APIs?
We don't have them in this solution. Maybe, probably. We didn't try it out. Depends on if ArchUnit.net knows how to interpret it, but I think that it should work. Yeah.
Maybe to answer this with this slide, you see here the minimal API would probably be on the hosting layer.
Mm-hmm.
And we have usually extracted everything that needs to be done in the controller down to the application layer. So our controllers in the hosting layer usually are one-liners that say mediator sent that request and return the response. So we are so thin that we usually do not need them. And yeah. But I don't know what would speak against it.
I think it should work. I wouldn't know why it wouldn't. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm. How would you convince your company to move to a modular monolith app instead of microservices?
That's a great question. The thing is, with microservices, to succeed, you need to have a good defined context that this microservice should handle. The same thing you need to do in a modular monolith. So this kind of how do you slice your domain and what is the boundary of such a module is the same issue. If you get this wrong, you will usually get a distributed big ball of mud. So the microservices are just additional technical complexity added on top of what you would have with monoliths. So you have distributed calls instead of in-process calls. Refactoring is usually harder. So you have a few drawbacks with microservices but you also have a few advantages. Like with microservices, usually it's easier to have multiple teams on it and develop concurrently, each one covering one microservice. And you also have better scalability or technological independence for them. If you need one of those things, microservices are quite valuable. If you're just maybe one team developing or two teams developing and you do not need those performance, scalability and everything, modular monolith might be good for you because it speeds up the development and the cost of maintaining a lot of infrastructure for the microservices.
Yep. Hi. Thank you for the talk. How is your pipeline? Like, do you execute these test cases during the pipeline, or because it in your actual solution it remains with the code, and as a developer who when I change something that okay, this is now allowed or this is an exception, what is the process basically on that side?
Yeah, it just works on the pipelines. You run the tests as every other unit test, and the pipeline has the verify files eject out from the solution. And if the developer forgot or didn't run the architecture unit test, then the pipeline will go red, and you will see which kind of violations you have. Yeah.
But it is still more like on the good developer situation, right? Because if there is a violation and I don't want to fix it now or don't want to put it on violation, the developers will put it as an exception or allowed namespaces.
Yeah, if you can always have.
So it is like a check gate, but not a prevention thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does not prevent bad behavior if I just add it. But it's the same with other architecture tests, because I heard of teams like we had architecture tests implemented. The onboarding did not take good place. We didn't understand how to manage them. So we just dumped the tests and went on with the solution. So this kind of behavior you can always have in both situations.
Thank you.
The great thing is the verify files show up in the PRs. So some other developer also needs to say, yeah, okay, for now this is okay if you overrule this, but there are two people actually who will allow this. So there is a gate. And as I said before, we have an extra gate with our implementation. If you just check in the verify file without doing anything, it will still go red. So you need to decide if it's allowed, permanently allowed, or a violation we will need to fix later.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Those properties were especially helpful in having multiple teams committing to the same solution, because we had a strict deadline. We knew this API that we were using will be down in 3 months. We really did not care that much about the technical vision I had for the whole modular monolith. We cared about getting that API ready. And as you heard from Tim when he left the team, it was like this stack of violations. And we had the team agreement with them, like, it's totally okay, you need to get it done. But once you're handing it over for me and my team for maintenance, we had the agreement also with the product owners, this list needs to be 0. Then we will take the ownership.
Yeah, and for me, last week when I prepared, I saw there are no more violations, and nice. I knew exactly at a glance, perfect.
We did not
like
fix them.
as you intended.
Yeah, that worked good.
Yeah. It's very good.
Maybe less of a question, but a thought that may spark a conversation. All in all, having class libraries and projects have a lot more discipline than using project references rather than just namespaces. And tools like Writer then help you show a dependency graph and flows between your assemblies and modules.
If I get you correctly, the thought is like, if you have projects, you have a good tooling support from the Visual Studio and the JetBrains setups to view the dependencies. In my experience with the JetBrains toolings, you can also go that you see the dependencies, not just between the projects, but between the folders, which correlate to namespaces. So the tooling, in my experience, supports this approach. Not the default setting, but with a little drop down, you get there.
Which questions do we have still in the audience here? We still have time. I think the pizza is not here yet, so.
Yeah, I mean, pizza is not there, so. Thank you for the talk. My question is, who was like deciding on dependency? Like this should depend on this, like basically writing the tests itself, maybe the main one, yes, to have a guidance, which module should depend on which and should not depend. Yeah. So somebody need to start with the rules. So how you come up with this? Was it from the start successful, or you had some iteration of changing like approach?
Even this one here. Do you mean the dependencies between the modules here?
Yes.
Or
yes.
Not the layers, the modules here. This is a very tough topic that we discuss quite a lot because we have some hard decisions here and we are not really there that it is completely cycle free, which shows that we have some concepts mixed into two slices that should be one. But this is usually a quite ongoing discussion between in the team and how we should do this. Usually, if we have this kind of discussions, we will do architectural decision records to know in the end why we did it like that. But we basically have to decide as a team from a business, from a team and business perspective, like, okay, what is really this module? What is the context of this? And what should it need? What we aim here is to have reduce dependencies and reduce complexity. A good example is the identification and the master data, because at identification, I need from the master data the information for a person, the name, the surname, and the date of birth. And we were like, okay, should now the identification name just get an ID of that person and query the master data? Or should the master data push it into the identification? And this kind of discussions will be made explicitly now that we have this, because we are forced to decide on this. And it usually does not happen that we get random cycles or accidental complexity into the system. But this is one thing, it's not easy and deterministic to decide on this. And you have usually to live with some kind of compromise that you get for reducing the complexity and the decoupling of those slices.
Thank you.
I think I saw a second hand before. No? Okay, yes, we have some.
I have a question about the tests. So there are a lot of modules and I assume a lot of tests. How long does it take to run all the tests? Do you run them in parallel? And if someone is working just on one module, is it supported to run only the tests of that particular module?
So last question, yes, and the test run in parallel. The architecture needs to be set up once, and then all the tests use that architecture from ArchUnit.net. And I don't think it's running really long. Like the longest thing that it takes is the loading the architecture. That's what you also saw. And then the rest of the tests are pretty quick, like maybe 10 seconds or something, or even less. So as soon as the architecture is loaded, it's really quick because the namespaces are already in memory, and you just extract those you need and then you dump it.
I also meant the other tests, all the tests of the application, not only the architectural.
Can you log in?
Yeah.
Currently, the whole time, when you're developing, we also have sliced our tests per module. So we're using rack and roll, we're doing behavior-driven development. So we see here we have a slice for the Stamm, which is the master data. We have a slice for the context. We have a slice for the identification. The Caroline's team did not use this test setup. We used another setup where we have more traditional unit tests, and we also are sliced in that. So during development, you can just focus on testing your slice. On the CI/CD pipeline, we have not yet implemented that, okay, check if changes are only in that slice when you need only to run that kind of test. Because we have some legacy issues. The solution structure is not exactly mirrored on the file structure. So we could not implement this performance optimization for the CI/CD pipeline yet.
Okay, one more.
Yeah.
Have you tried to use AI agent where you generate a code, then ask it to run the tests to evaluate if something is broken and to fix it? Because this mechanism, in my opinion, is quite nice to put some boundaries on the AI agent.
Not yet. I had one use case where I tried with an AI agent to have some refactorings. I'm not sure if those refactorings are from another kind, but it was like half a year ago, and I think the models were not quite there yet. But actually, we should have really good boundary to get there. I'm not sure how good we work with the verify files with that kind of framework. But basically, it should be a good setup. And I hope we can try it this year.
Thank you.
I put into the chat some additional answer to the discussion about namespaces and assembly. And I just put my thought about maybe we should fix our tooling to better support namespaces. So this could be one idea how we can fix it in industry, because loading a lot of dependencies is also a performance problem, and can be in hot path environments really a big problem. So maybe we should fix our tooling and not try to work around it with our source code, our programs. So that was my thought, and even I think there are engineers working on it at Microsoft, even like merging assemblies. So there's a lot done on the .NET side to make it better. So let's see how long it takes that they will fix these kind of things. Yeah, that was my thought. I just pushed to the YouTube channel, to the chat. Thank you for the invite to say it also here.
Good. Questions here in the audience on stream? Then, thank you. Let's end it here. Can you quickly switch to my slide? Yes. So quick outro, but we have some time left. So browser is slow. Good. Yeah. Let's wait until the speakers are unmiked. Good. So, thank you, Tim and Patrick, for giving this talk and answering all our questions. And thank you to our sponsors, Tech Talk here for location, drinks, and salmon food. Okay, 8 minutes. Thanks to Rubicon for sponsoring .NET Meetups, the .NET Meetup Financial, and JetBrains for the raffle. And let's quickly do the raffle. I only need to find the right browser window. So you still have time to enter it. We have 7 entries, and let's draw quickly. And the lucky winner is Team Droid Systems on YouTube. Please reach out to us on this email address, team@.netdevs.at, and you will get your raffle, your voucher in the next days. And with that, we are at the end. Have a nice rest of the day. It's quite dark and snowy in Vienna, so we all have to stay late until the snow goes away. Yeah. Bye to the stream, and let's hope the pizza is soon here.